Hey everybody, welcome to another episode of the Tech-Mex podcast. This is episode, yes, he says, number 16. My name is Eric Ramirez. I'm here with my co-host, Mando Gomez.
Yeah. And the crowds go wild.
Well, today we've got some interesting news that we want to cover with y'all. So we've got things about some Bitcoin miners, something a little bit about BlackRock, and a little bit of health for Latinos. So let's get into it. Dale.
Yeah, dale. All right, so something interesting, and this might be a little bit polemical. Are you familiar with the Women's Grace Hopper Conference? It usually
Haven't heard of
happens,
it.
no?
Mm-mm.
So there is some events, and I have attended some of them here in Houston and in other areas. And usually it's for recruiting. You're trying to recruit people, right? So in this case, and they're very good because they're almost students finishing out college or university, and they come from all over the place. And last time that I did it, it was very good in my opinion because it gives an opportunity to the companies. In that time, I was in Twitter. I was working for Twitter, and our booth was kind of small compared to other ones. I mean, compared to the Amazon or compared to the I don't know, Tesla. Those were pretty big booths,
Mm-hmm.
and there was a lot of lines of people, right? So that one it was an opportunity for the companies, at least for Twitter, for us to be able to start recruiting, getting resumes, and a lot of people. Sometimes you can see uh, the importance of the brands, right? Like there were people like literally like long line, like they were be waiting. I don't know, 30 minutes, 40 minutes just to talk to you. So and yeah, when they start talking, they start asking, hey, what type of roles do you have? How is to work in that company? Like questions, very open questions, right? One thing that I start doing, by the way, is that I start looking the resumes, and I notice a pattern where they suck. so so if you are actually building your resume, try to get a template. But remember also, and I know that it's hard. Like I mentioned it in previous episode where you have to start somewhere. And when you're building your resume, what you're trying to do is to explain how you're going to add value to that company, right? Some stuff, and I know that you're a student, maybe you haven't working what you're supposed to be. It's okay. Maybe just show the traits, show the experience. I was asking, hey, maybe did you help a teacher, or maybe did you did a project in your school? List those. Those are the ones that I want to know, at least for tech. I want to know if you knew any specific language or any specific technology, and literally spell out a narrative. What was complex about it? How did you overcame that, right? And if you were able to finish it. I spent a good amount of time in the resumes, and I was just like crossing, right? Oh, this is so helpful. You're so helpful, Mando. Like, can I reach out to you on LinkedIn? Sure, whatever. But yeah, that's what the event is about.
Okay, so it's kind of like a job fair. It's like speed dating for people looking for jobs, basically.
Basically,
Yeah.
it is a job fair, right? And
Mhm.
here is the why actually it was on the news a couple of weeks ago. This year was in Orlando, in Florida, and what it made it the news is because it's supposed to be for women, and there were basically some men trying to get a jobs. Man, what's your take there?
Well, that's pretty interesting. So is Grace Hopper typically just for women, like
Hmm.
normally?
Yeah.
Okay. Okay, I thought it was open to anybody. Well, so that's pretty interesting. Like, if this is specifically for like a women's conference, and which it's made to, I suppose, advance,
Hmm.
women in tech, science, things like that. And there's a bunch of, was it like an organized
It
attack?
is it, it
Like
is
not
always,
attack,
yeah.
or is it? No, no, no. I mean by the men that showed up. Did the men kind of collude to all go together, or was it just like
It's
a
just
lot of
happened.
men who
The
ended up
look,
show up?
I'll give them the benefit of the doubt that it was not organized. That it's just the demand just happened to be right. I can tell you, I have been in tech for many years, and usually I have seen the ratio growing, right? And that's what you want. You want a diverse team, and there's always goodness on having a diverse team. And in my team, at least for the female portion, diversity is not only about females; it's about different. You go to gender, color, all of that, right? So just to be able to have different perspectives. But at least for the female portion on the ratio, I noticed that sometimes it would be very low, like many years ago, and also it was because they were not studying engineering, right? But now that more females are studying engineering, and they're getting into the field, I have seen it growing, which is awesome in my opinion. Um, uh, I saw it between 5%, 10%, and in Twitter was the first time in my career that I saw almost a 50-50 ratio. It is pretty high. I don't think that that's kind of the norm. Usually was a ratio more of a kind of the average on the industry, at least as I know, is about 15-20% ratio between men to females. So these type of events, it's an outlet for females and women to be able to get an opportunity. So from my perspective, look, I get it. You have to find a job. I just feel attacky, man. It's like, come on. There's so many other events, so many other job fairs, right? Like, I don't know. I really think that is empathy, right? I think that that's what maybe is lacking, but I get it. I think that also they might not be doing it uh, with malas, right? I think that is just maybe they need to find a job too, right? So, but yeah, that was the reason why I made it the news.
Yeah, pretty interesting. I mean, yeah, at first thought, I'm like, wow, there's a group that organized to get together to kind of disrupt this thing. But I hope that's not really the case. Yeah, but I get it. Right now, it's really tough. Right now, um, it's difficult to find jobs for a lot of people. I know in tech specifically, there's been a lot of layoffs recently. So, uh,
I I,
I could see why that would happen.
I found a nice infographic. It reported about 220,000 people got laid off, and from all companies, from your Google, like they call it FANG. And the reason why they
Mhm.
call it FANG is because they used to be the initials of the names of the companies. In that time, it was Facebook, Apple, Amazon, Netflix, and Google. Now you can debate that it could be Manga, which is also Microsoft there, right? So, or Meta as well, right? So, which because they rename the names, right, for these companies. But yeah, usually in tech, or techies, that's the other way that they call us techies. That's how, and usually are very well paid jobs, right? So, and they started from those. I mean, everybody heard the news on Twitter, that basically Elon managed out a lot of the people. So, uh, but then it started rolling out to all of the different companies, right? Sometimes these CEOs, they set trends. Sometimes they might be good, and sometimes they might be bad, right? And I think that also the recession, that they say that we're in recession or recession, it might actually play a little bit onto that.
Yeah, I think a lot of these companies they've got to prepare. They can't get caught off guard, so they try
Mm,
to stay ahead of the curve essentially, so that they don't get um, they don't get in the red where they're paying too much for the employees and those overhead type costs, so that you know they can weather the storm of that recession. So
yeah.
that's something that can happen. But so then what happens then is, unfortunately, you see these events that maybe are catered specifically for a certain demographic, whether it's a female or maybe a minority driven type of event, and everybody just shows up because everybody's in need of jobs, and a lot of these layoffs has affected a lot of people. Now, in tech, though, I don't know. A lot of people may not have as much empathy because their people were getting paid $500,000 a year, right? And they should be able to weather a little bit of time off. I think a little bit more than the normal person. So you gotta understand also that these people, if they've had a job for a few years, they should have a couple $1,000,000 already in the bank, anyways. So
Yeah,
uh,
yeah. I mean, if they save up and all of that, but I know many that they didn't because and that's a mistake, right? Like people when they start making more money, no, doesn't matter how much money you're making. If you are living outside of your means, you're still gonna be poor, right? It doesn't matter if you are making 1 billion a year. If you are spending 1.5 billion, guess what? You're in debt.
yeah, Elon was bought Twitter for how many billion? 44 billion.
44. I'm
44 billion.
sorry. Yeah, and now is how much is worth?
Half
Uh,
that probably, right?
no, less though. It's
Oh
8
no.
billion. So yes, he lost a bunch of money. So happens to everyone, right?
Yeah. Yeah, I guess so. You just buy bigger toys at that point,
Yeah,
I
it's just
suppose.
bigger companies and all that, but yeah, yeah.
Well, it's unfortunate that this happened at this Grace Hopper conference. Like Mondo said, I think, yeah, it's a little bit uh, tacky of this happening, but you gotta eat. You gotta eat. You tend to do what you have to do just to make sure you make ends meet. So yeah, pretty interesting though. I think though, I don't know what do you see the outlook right now for tech jobs and things like that, Mondo?
I think that I have saying this, but I'll repeat it again. You have to go into AI. It's even not utilizing, even if you're not doing or advancing the those algorithms and all of that, you still have to learn how to use the tools. We mentioned a chat GPT, but if you are a techie, you have to learn about LLMs, right? That's kind of the lingo on things, right, for the algorithms. And you have to learn maybe even to use some of the tooling like Copilot. Copilot is kind of like a little helper on when you are coding. Imagine like your Word document that you are literally putting sentences and all of that. And the copilot, the AI is watching and is trying to autocomplete. Like when you are auto-completing in Google and if you think that is Google is thinking what you actually want to say, well, imagine for programmers, it's truly helping and it's giving you a blocks of content. And it's quite amazing in my mind. Like, oh, wow, they can see all of your code and they can rematch it. So I think that that's kind of a crucial point right now for techies and for everyone in general because these are great tools.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, we can speak to it from the developer's point of view, right? You need to learn how to use these tools to help your development works or work cycle or workflows. But even for non-developers, people that are interested in using the technology, right? You might be an engineer that wants to see if you can apply some of those things to the things that you're doing, your workflows and things like that, or just a creative person that's creating content, you need to learn how to use like the mid journeys and the dollies and things like that of the world. You need to be able to understand how to do that, know how to use ChatGPT. These are all those tools are freely available for you just to go out and try out. This week, just for fun, I've had the Stable Diffusion loaded up on
Mhm.
my computer right for a while now, and I'm like, I haven't used it for a while. But back in the day, I had early on when you couldn't run these models on your own computers, I used the Google Collab to run it on the cloud, right? And I had created a model with my face on there.
Sure.
So I trained the model with my face, and I brought down the that checkpoint file and I loaded up into SDXL on my own PC, and I started running it and coming up with new avatars. So at work, I've been putting it up on my as my avatars. It was like, Eric, is that you? You lost some weight, huh? I'm like, yeah. Don't have me turn my camera on though.
That's
But
cool.
it's just even just to practice using the tools, getting familiar with
Hmm.
them, knowing what they do, what all the different words mean, how they fit together. You can do those things to keep up with the technology, even if you're not doing any type of development
I,
product
I
or
am
anything
I
like
am
that.
curious the advancement that we're gonna have in everywhere, in tech, in music, in everything, because it is a 10x, right? We will see and keeping improving in all gambits, right? So I'm curious in the next 5-10 years how it's gonna look everything.
For sure. And I know Microsoft just recently made a big push to start dropping little bits and pieces into all of their software. So,
Hmm.
I think all of their, like even Bing Search now is going to have the
Yep.
integrated DALI, the Chat GPT is going to have integrate DALI in there also. So you can chat and ask it to create images all at the same time. You don't have to go swap back and forth into different tools. So
Yep.
eventually, all the big companies are going to have their own version that does everything, right? It's going to be
Yep.
general purpose.
I think that, and actually that was on the news too, though. We need a way to identify kind of watermarks to have some audits, because right now it's very hard. It's the Wild West. Um, if you're training in certain sets of assets or data, the algorithm for AI, uh, then maybe you might have to pay some licenses, right? It is an interesting problem, because it used to be before that you have to pay royalties, because it was very obvious where the work was coming from. But right now, literally, you're having the whole consciousness of internet, and you're putting in an algorithm, and it's spitting out content, and it's very hard to figure out where the idea came from and how you reward these people.
Yeah. I know some companies, the approach they've taken is they say, okay, all of the models that we're training, we're licensed to use all of the data that's within this model. So
Hmm.
you don't have to worry about we're using like, someone that didn't opt in for their data to be used or their imagery to be used, things like that. So I know like with Adobe, I've been using their Firefly a lot as well. Firefly is their let's call it their mid journey or their DALI,
Hmm.
Adobe's version. So Adobe obviously has a library of different images that they've had around for forever, right? Because that's kind of
Hmm.
what they do. So that's what they use to train their models on. So as long as you are part of, you pay Adobe their licensing or whatever for, using Photoshop or whatever, you're free to use their Adobe Firefly. Now, when it was still early on with Firefly, I got in as a beta user and was able to use it. Yeah, they would always stick the watermark on everything. So,
Hmm.
but if you can use Photoshop, you know how to take that off anyways.
Yeah.
But now that it's I think they've opened it up recently, like over the last month or two to everybody.
I
So
think
now
that
they
there
don't
are
have it anymore.
I think that there are ways of there are also other algorithms. It's kind of the counterpart of this, right? Like you have companies that they are making sure that there are content and AI, and you are start seeing companies that they are trying to audit to see, is this content created by AI? So they are basically a trail of some signatures that you can see that it was non-human, because it's, I guess, too perfect, or there are patterns where maybe a machine will use a certain way of language, right? And again, it's just to try to identify, because think about it, if a school is asking for an essay as part of their admission, and you just go to ChatGPT, it's like, hey, write an essay with 300 words,
Yeah.
voila, right? Like, so it is harder, right? It is harder to identify, and it's disrupting a lot of places and lot of things.
Yeah. I've got a couple thoughts on that. So I think
Hmm.
maybe policy wise, yeah, you can ask all of these AI companies, hey, put some type of fingerprint in there so we can tell if it came from you. Now, that could be done in lots of different ways, but maybe that's a policy type thing that can be done. I like in terms of these things, these programs that try to determine whether it's AI based or not, they're I don't think they're going to be super effective, at least for like language and stuff like that.
Hmm.
I don't think they'll be super effective because you can essentially tell your AI, hey, introduce errors so it seems more human like, or hey, make sure this can pass this detector test. Like, if the AI is smart enough, it should be able to make it like that. So I think one of it is be able to put a fingerprint. The second thing is on the school aspect that you brought up. I think if you think about it, I don't know if you remember, like back in the day, we had the graphing calculators when they like first
Mhm.
started coming out, and then
Yeah,
everyone
yeah.
was
The
freaking out
HP
like, "Oh,
ones, right?
yeah, exactly." Or the TI
Yeah,
86s, the
yeah,
TI
the Texas
89s,
Instrument,
all
yeah,
those.
The Texas Instrument one, yep.
Like they're like, "Oh, you can't use calculators on your tests," and that's been a thing like going way back, right? But it's in reality, it's like, look, these tools are going to be available when you're an adult, you're actually working and things like that. So, wouldn't it be better to test you so that you know how to use these tools like this graphing calculator to help you do your job better? Well, in the same way, maybe we just need to change a little bit, and it takes time. But if these large language models are going to be out there like Chat GPT to help you do this type of work, maybe the assignments need to change so that they're not just asking you, "Hey, write a paper on this." Maybe it's
Hmm.
a different type of assignment. Maybe it's more of a practical type thing where you're doing a specific project instead of just asking the student just to regurgitate information
Yeah.
in word form, right? So I think some of that we've got to change and move forward towards a different way of doing it because AI is just going to keep growing.
Mhm.
Someone mentioned to me once, well, we just need to ban AI. We need to make sure or slow it down so that we
W-
can't use
Yeah,
it. I'm like, well,
that
that's maybe
that
not the
never
right
works.
approach. That's
No,
not
no,
that's not really the right approach, right?
we open Pandora box and you can't. It's like now, if you start prohibiting in some areas, you're not now competitive because guess what? Maybe other countries, right? Asia or whatever, they will start keep using it. Or if they ban it there, we are in an advantage. So I think that yeah, usually those type of measurements don't work, blocking or banning things.
Yeah, for
I
sure.
mean,
So
you remember like in Bitcoin, they actually China tried to ban it and almost and they were and that didn't work, right? So
I think they banned it about 48 times already or something like that.
it's like this is ban number 40.
Oh, that's too funny. Well,
So,
speaking of Bitcoin, I think there was some other news about
mhm.
BlackRock, right?
Yep.
So I think we've mentioned it before that there's these ETFs that are coming up. There's been a lot of applications by big companies. We talked about BlackRock that are trying to get an ETF approved so that they can allow institutional buyers, basically other big companies, hedge fund people, to buy Bitcoin themselves, so they can include it into their accounts, basically. So there's an insider that leaked some information that said, "Hey, they think it's going to happen, and maybe within the next 3 to 6 months." And BlackRock, for those of y'all that don't remember, they have over $17 trillion of managed funds. So even if they put just a small percentage of that, even just 1% into Bitcoin, that's gonna be a big boon for that. And BlackRock's not the only one. There's several other companies that are
Mhm.
doing the same thing.
So quote me on this, October 7th, Mando's prediction.
I gotta see.
Bitcoin, 120K. I think that it's just a pattern that I see that usually I see that is doubling, and the volatility will continue to diminish. Right, in some point will stabilize, but I don't think that we will have a 90% drop
Drawdown.
like in drawdown in like in the previous cycles. But again, I'm not a financial advisor. Do your own research. We are some only two dudes in the internet.
Yeah, yeah, that's true. Well, we weren't far off from the 90%. I think we probably hit 80% drawdown. So
Yeah,
I mean, it's still a substantial amount from the last side around 70K, right? So
yeah. But again, nobody could predict it, right? I mean, who will predict it that COVID was there, right? So nobody. So,
well,
but
well, some people may have, right? But no, that's a different story. We're going down a different rabbit hole there. But yeah, but just remember, for those of y'all that are maybe a little bit newer to Bitcoin, there's cycles to it because of the halving. So there's a big event in Bitcoin called the halving that's coming up. We think it's going to be around April of 2024. It has to do with the algorithm that runs Bitcoin.
mhm,
Basically, for all the miners that are out there that are um, working to secure the network, their reward for doing that work is going to get halved. So I think it's going to go to 6 Bitcoin or 6.25 Bitcoin in April, something like that, right?
It is the last chunk of bitcoins. Basically, we are 90%, 95% of the all of the Bitcoin mined. So it is 20. How many? 20 millions.
21 million total
Yeah, in total. But
over, but like the last half a million are going to be over the next 100 years or something like that. I don't know.
yeah, yeah.
It's a long tail,
Quantum
long tail.
quantum computing, right? So, and I think that that's kind of the other portion, right? If you think about it, we are almost 8 billion people in the world, and that's the reason why some of the very basic splitting on this, it is to make sure. And again, when if you are new to Bitcoin, it's not that you have to or you must have a one Bitcoin. In theory, you can have a Satoshi, which is a very, very tiny fraction of a Bitcoin. So that's what we're gonna see. There is actually a nice meme that is showing the progression and pricing for Bitcoin, and it's like one of the webcomic. It says, "Oh, he's a Bitcoiner, has one whole Bitcoin." Because in some point that's what is going to happen if price continues to raise, right? Maybe one Bitcoin in some point in so many years might be 1 million, right? So and that's the reason why you want to have some fractions of it as well.
That's right. There's some people out there that try to do the calculations about, well, how much Bitcoin do you need to like be well off in the future, maybe over the next 10 years, let's call it.
Mm,
A lot of people say, well, if you have 0.28 Bitcoin, like you've made it. That's really the new goal. Just because having one full Bitcoin right now seems pretty far off for a lot of people, because right now it's what 25, 26,000, something like that. It goes
yeah,
up and down every day, right? But
yep,
so people have set those goals, and again, if it hits that 1 million here within by 2030 or something like that, a lot of people are well, $280,000. That's going to be, that's enough to a down payment on a house, depending on how big of a house or a whole house for a lot of people. So
yep,
that's how people are seeing it. But there's three things that are maybe at this point that are culminating right now that could drive the price up. So one of them is again these ETFs that we mentioned. There's a lot of big hedge funds that are about to make a big investment. They're just waiting for the SEC to approve all of these ETFs, and they're saying they'll likely approve them all at the same time. That way, not
yeah,
one of them has a bit of like timing
an
advantage.
advantage. Hmm.
So that's one thing. Another thing is just kind of the inflation. If there continues to be inflation, which there seems there could be, there's a war that just broke out this morning. Um, all of those things tend to drive inflation and things like that. The country start printing more money, so that drives inflation. So if inflation is going up, usually Bitcoin gets stronger. That's just what we've seen historically. And then the third thing is the thing that we mentioned. It's the halving, right? There's going to be less Bitcoin that's being created on a daily basis, mined on a daily basis. So the value is going to go up because scarcity's going up. There's going to be less Bitcoin to go around for the people that are trying to buy more. So those three things are coming together here over the next year and a half, and usually that's what you see. I do also want to add. So there's been some analysis by I think Plan B. Plan B
Hmm.
is one of the guys that has made some of these models that show kind of where the trajectory of Bitcoin is going. But he's said that like a good time to get into Bitcoin is usually at least six. I think he says 6 months before a halving. That's usually going to be around where your bottom is. So if the halving is going to occur in April of 2024, then now is probably a good time to get into Bitcoin. And we've seen that it's kind of stabilized at around this
Hmm.
25 to 28K range. And then the high then goes on for, I think he says, a year and a half after the halving, so 18 months post halving. That takes us into, I think, 2025, and that's where he says likely the height of this cycle will
Recycle.
be, and then it starts over again. But uh, all the site like Ben, what's his name? Benjamin into the cryptoverse. He's got a YouTube
Hmm.
channel out there.
Yeah.
Forget his last name, but like he says, these Bitcoin cycles, they're not necessarily a copy of each other, but they do rhyme. So you'll
Hmm.
see these cycles behave in certain ways. And he has a very good macroeconomic view on it. If you want to
Yeah.
get a little bit more into the analysis.
If you're into that, he does a nice. It's called technical analysis. There are many ways to buy stocks or buy assets, and he likes to kind of study in a. There are a couple different ways. Like one way is fundamentals that you start seeing macroeconomy and all of that, and the other one is with technical analysis. And this guy checks both. So yeah, his channel is good. So shout out to him. The other thing that was coming out on the news though, Tesla. It's always on the news, right? So there are a couple things there on Tesla. One is some speculation on how the new Tesla, that everybody's calling it Model 2, but I don't think that Elon is going to call it that way. And it has the resemblance of a Cybertruck, right? So I told you in a previous episode that I think that we're going to start seeing more like straight lines,
That's right.
very cyber
Masculine. I think that's what you said.
masculine.
Masculine.
Yeah, yeah. And it's happening. I coined it.
You called it, Mondo. Yeah,
Yeah,
let's
I
put
called
another
it.
one on your checkbox there. But you know what? I think it's pretty interesting. Trends tend to change, and
Mm.
I've been shopping for my next vehicle for a while, right? I think I maybe
Uh,
mentioned.
I I thought that you say I was shopping. It's like what you who you are shopping?
I've been chopping. Yeah, no, I've been shopping. It still comes out that way. I've been shopping for a new a car for a while right now. Right, since I got rid of the Porsche, I moved from a Porsche to a 5 Series 535, but also moved on from that, and I've been kind of determining what kind of car do I want. So we went to I think I've been wanting to do a truck just because I've been enjoying going to the beach and things like that. So Cybertruck was
Mhm.
a natural fit. And when it came out, my jaw dropped because they had planned it and they were teasing the Cybertruck as an unveil, right? Like, this is going to be it. This is going to be so cool. And a lot of people thought it was going to be very futuristic and how it looked and the design and things like that. But when it came out with this angular triangle, they weren't expecting that. And it really did come out of nowhere.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
And so this is very, very different. But the reason I hadn't pulled a trigger on a truck before is because I'm like, man, they really all just look the same. And the design hasn't changed in years, right?
Yeah,
And
yeah.
so that's why I was like, you know what? I was vacillating between should I just get one of these trucks? The one that I was maybe most interested in was a Ford Raptor,
The Raptor
or
is
do
nice. Yeah,
the Raptor is it's kind of a fun car. Still has the same look, but you can modify it
you
so
can
that it looks a little
modify it
bit
with.
different.
I know that we like your lowrider neon on the bottom, right? Like
With the base and all the way
with
up.
the
Yeah, yeah.
base, when there is a stop sign, you can actually lift it on the front. I know your taste, man.
Yeah, yeah, well, that's I'm like, okay, Raptor, or do I go back to just another Porsche or something like that? So, but when that came out, I mentioned it before. Man, that thing, it looks so weird, and I didn't purchase. Like, you could put your $100 down to reserve
Mhm.
an order, and I didn't do that, Nate. I slept on it. I woke up. I'm like, you know what? It's growing on me. It's cool, and that's why I bought it. But it's such a brutal like design, and in architecture, I like that same design, like in a home and things like that. So like my
It's
new
a
house.
mudra, man. It's a mudra. Like
Oh, is that
it's
like the Illuminati or what? What is that?
I think so. So we'll do a woo woo
I haven't
episode,
heard that one before.
right?
Okay, I
You
haven't
coin
heard
it.
that
We
theory before.
we call it out here.
Is that the all-seeing eye? That's what's on
The
the
old
the
scene
logo, right?
Yeah.
Oh man. Well, either way, very cool design, and like you said, it's likely going to be a shift here. I've noticed some other automakers also trying to future kind of make their vehicles look a little bit more futuristic as well. So it's going to have an effect on others too.
Yeah, I will see how Apple it was the trend, right, for many years on very circular, very feminine, very aesthetic, right? I'm curious that battle, how it's gonna look like, right? So there again, there's a lot of advancements, and now with AI, we might see other type of almost non-human type of designs, right? Because now the machine can come up also with very good designs. But yeah, that was on the news. The other thing that was on the news was this thing called the Giga Water Loop, close by Austin, here in our almost our backyard. What do you think that that thing is?
You know what? I think Elon Musk just likes to do things to keep us on our toes. He's just like making stuff up. He's like, this is gonna get him this week. You know, it's
Yeah, it's an
I have
attention
no clue
whore.
what it is. Maybe that's what it is. I have no clue what it is, but I think we've heard previously that at the Gigafactory in Austin, he wanted to do that like into like an ecological park, something like that.
Mm.
So it could be part of that. I don't know, or it could be part of some manufacturing process that we don't know about yet.
I don't know, but it looks nice. It looks cool. And yeah, take a look on Google the image, and it looks pretty good. So that came out as well on the news. Uh, Talking about energy and all of that, something interesting that came out too. Are you familiar with this with the company ERCOT? Or it's not a company; it's actually part of the government, right?
Well, I think a lot of people have heard of ERCOT in Texas because they froze their butts off a couple of years ago because ERCOT couldn't manage the electricity demands in Texas, and everybody lost power when it was like one of the coldest ever events here in Texas, and some people even died because they didn't
Yeah.
have electricity in their home. So it was a big
But I
event.
was in Miami Beach, baby.
You fled. You were out there with Rubio, huh?
No, with the senator, right? What was no, it wasn't Rubio though. It
It's
was
not Rubio. Who's it? Ted
no, it was
Cruz. Ted
the
Cruz.
Ted Cruz, but he
Ted
went to
Cruz. That's who it
Cancun.
was. Oh, he went to Cancun. It's
Yeah,
like,
yeah.
oh God. Yeah, he didn't want to ride out the storm here. So yeah. So a lot of people have heard of this ERCOT because they're the ones that are supposed to manage the Texas grid. For a little bit of context, there's a lot of electrical grids that manage electricity needs throughout the United States. Well, us being in Texas, we like to do everything on our own and be kind of very independent. So Texas has its own energy grid, and ERCOT is the company behind it that manages it. Now, there was a lot of there was a lot of I want to say scam, but not necessarily scam, but scandal behind this because a lot of the people that were running ERCOT at the time when this thing happened, they're not even from Texas. They were from all different parts of the United States. So
Okay.
they had no vested interest in making sure because they're not here, their families aren't here.
Mhm.
They didn't really care, and they let it fail, and it led to death. So that's not a very good look. So since then, I think they've tried to improve some of that, but I don't know how much they've actually done to change it. But anyway,
Well,
so ERCOT,
yeah. So the news though is that they actually pay a Bitcoin miner, about 31 million back in August. So, which is a lot of mullah, right? So, but it's just quite interesting to me that how they are not able to. They are kind of whenever they can't provide all of that energy, they ask the miner, "Hey, stop mining." But obviously, the miner is like, "Hey, I need an incentive. I need a little bit of oil
yeah,
to be able to stop the
exactly.
the production." So, I'm glad that it's working out for both, right? For the miners and for ERCOT, because obviously it's kind of trying to control the demand in one way, right? So,
Yeah.
what's your point of view for that?
Well, I think it's actually it's kind of a brilliant strategy. So they came up with this strategy working with the miners where like, look, the ERCOT needs to increase the capacity of electricity and power in Texas, right? So
Hmm.
there's like in electricity for the grid itself for it to not be damaged, you need to have supply and demand kind of pretty
Very
close
close.
together,
Hmm.
right? Because you can't have excess electricity, because what happens if you push too much electricity through a wire, right? It's going to burn
It is
up.
very hard, by the way, for those people, it's very hard to store it. And that's the reason why also Tesla has their power walls to be able to store energy. So yeah, there, and sometimes it just almost gets destroyed because there is no way to store it. But
Yeah.
continue, yeah.
Yeah. So what ends up happening is, okay, well, if we need more electricity during the high peaks and things like that, we need to be able to increase capacity. But like at nighttime and things like that, there's not as much demand. So like you can't spin up a power plant during the day and then turn it off at night and then turn it on during the day and turn it off at night. It doesn't work like that. So what they came up with is, well, these miners, these big mining companies, what they can
Hmm.
do is they can help increase the capacity of ERCOT by saying, okay, we're going to use this many gigawatts of power, whatever it is, every day or every month or whatever. So we can increase capacity so that that capacity is going to be there if we need it. The only thing is, if like it's a super hot day, like in August, we had like 100 degrees, like back to back to back to back in Texas. So there was a lot of demand at that point. So what they do is like, they understand, oh, like next Wednesday or Thursday is going to be super hot. We're going to need a lot of power to run everybody's air conditioners, right?
Hmm.
Otherwise, we're going to have brownouts and people are going to get really hot, or they could die because they don't have air conditioning. In
What
Texas, that's
happened
why.
if I'm already brown?
Right. Well, you're able to withstand a little bit more heat, I think.
I think that is all my melanin, man.
The melanin, right?
Yeah.
But well, and so that's what the agreement is. Basically, okay, we're going to help ERCOT increase their capacity of electricity, and whenever they need extra power because it's super hot and people need more power to run their air conditioners, we're going
Hmm.
to give up that capacity to the grid, but only if you pay us. So it's a win-win for both.
It's a
You know,
win-win.
it's a win-win. The miners are able to make money by running their miners in a
Yep.
friendly state like Texas for these businesses, and we have ERCOT gets a better grid that's able to support more energy
More
demand
stable.
throughout the hot months and in the cold months too. So
Yep. For sure. I think that we have a solid one. Um, let's wrap it up, this.
all right. Well, hopefully y'all enjoyed hearing a little bit about the latest news that's going on in our world. If if you like this content, remember to like, subscribe, comment, share with your friends. Let them know that you're enjoying this content, and it would be good for them to also listen to us. So, any closing thoughts, Mando?
Yeah, get at least your 0.2% of a Bitcoin, right?
Now's the time, according to
Now's
Plan
the
B. Look,
time,
Plan B,
according to Plan B, huh? Again, we
right?
are not financial advisors.
Hey, but do it sin miedo, okay? See y'all
Sin
next time.
miedo. Dale. Bye.